What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to look at the game Metaphor from Atlas. They did a pretty long video today explaining the game, going into far more details than we really ever knew before. So I'm not going to break down every single one of them, but I do just want to talk overall about what we saw today and how impressed I am. I mean, this game looks awesome. The first big thing was actually the release date. They made sure to get out ahead of that, right? Saying it right at the beginning of the live stream, and then actually saying it multiple times. So October 11th. So this is, you can mark it down, right, as one of the fall games. We actually don't really have that many fall games, and I really think this is going to be a big one because the rest of it really showed, I think, just how good this game is going to be. It gives serious Persona vibes, okay? And I don't think that's a bad thing. And at the same time, is this a straight up, like, just one-to-one, right? Is this just a straight ripoff, let's say, of Persona? I really don't think so. I think they're trying their best to really try to make it differently. I did chuckle here and there, like, when things were really similar. In fact, one of the things they mentioned in terms of your personas, or this game's equivalent, right? They talked about battling your anxiety. Now, look, that's no laughing matter. Like, I don't joke about, like, literally that, but in terms of, like, that's how you get it, right? So you kind of have the theme of how you get personas in Persona, and in this game, when you battle your anxiety, you kind of unlock your inner, whatever you want to call it. And then they also went into more detail about how when you make bonds with, your allies, or technically they're your followers, I suppose, right? When you've bonded with them enough, you'll basically unlock a new class that you can do and the rest of your followers can do, right? So those were just a couple ways, and I kind of chuckled. It's like, okay, well, they had to think of a fun, different kind of way, right, to introduce personas into this world. But the game looks awesome. And I mean, when I say looks, I mean it in multiple ways. But if you just talk about visuals to start, holy God, like, this game visually looks awesome. And, they talked about the backdrops. They talked about how they wouldn't really call it open world, right? They're going to kind of funnel you through certain areas, but they made sure that the backdrops of certain locations and whatnot looked really good, and they certainly do. In fact, when they say that line, they're looking at, like, a city right down in the distance, and, who knows if you'll ever actually go there or not. You do go into parts of it, but maybe not the entire thing, but regardless, it still looks great. Even when they were talking about traveling, right, you're basically on a little train station, and you can go outside, and you can literally see as the thing moves from one place to the next. So the game visually looks awesome. I love the setting, and then they really went into it, I would say, setting up, like, the plot of this game. So basically, it's a game where you're trying to become king, right? You're trying to be the ruler, and you're going for influence. So you're going to be taking quests, main quests, side quests, kind of fetch quests, whatever. Again, you're going to be meeting people, and they classified them as your followers. I imagine you'll be able to get closer to some of them, so maybe they won't always be considered your followers. But, we got a couple snippets, I guess, at their names and some of the classes that they can do and you can do. We kind of got that sprinkled in. We got the fighting, and the fighting, to me, I really like it, right? Like, this to me is the natural evolution of Persona, where you have the turn-based, and I love the turn-based in Persona, and I think the turn-based here looks really cool. You got the flashy effects, and you have ways of matching your abilities with your allies, right? So you have the strategy element, but then you also have the quickness, and they talked about that when they were kind of walking around the dungeon, or labyrinth, or whatever you want to call it, and I liked the way they said it, right? Where if you're facing off on these lower-level enemies, and they're these weaklings, and they're tedious, right? You don't really want to do it. So they incorporate this almost hack and slash style along with turn-based. And now I don't know if this is, like, absolutely confirmed, but what I got from just watching it, it seems like the enemies that are easy, really, really easy, right? You'll be able to beat up in that world as you're walking around, right? The third person, hack and slash like thing, okay? It's stronger enemies that you can actually go into the turn-based stuff. And again, you're going to want to have your allies close to you. You're going to want to be able to strike them before they notice you. So things that we've kind of done in the past, right? And then you'll get first turn. If you attack them without them noticing, you'll get first turn. But I like it. And really, that's almost a Sega-like thing. Yakuza, actually the last game, Infinite Wealth, that was the first time they implemented it. If you go back to Like a Dragon, the 7th game, you'd have to do the tedious fights over and over and over. Even if enemies were much weaker than you, you'd have to fight them in the same way over and over. And although the fighting system was awesome, you have to do it thousands of times. In the newest game, in Infinite Wealth, when you were over leveled or when you were much higher of a level than your opponent, you can just beat them down very quickly. You didn't have to get into the actual turn-based thing. So I feel like they're taking lessons almost from each other inside of Sega, if that makes sense, right? Because that's what this thing really showed off to me. Okay, so you had that. I mean, it all looked so good. The only other thing I really want to shout out again was that traveling. So, I mentioned being able to go outside and kind of like be almost like a train, right? Like you can look out the window in this, you can literally go outside and almost like a patio, right? And kind of see where you're going. But I mean, it looked pretty cool. And they didn't go into, I guess, too many details. Like, they showed certain rooms. They showed certain things you can do, like cook and whatnot. But they mentioned, like, washer and dryer, and, certain rooms and certain machines or just things in general, but that you couldn't actually do anything with. And I wonder if they'll come back to that, or when the game comes out, those things will unlock over time. But I guess adding to this part, they talked about how when you're going around the world that it takes days, right? So they definitely kept that system as well from Persona, right? You have limited days to do some quests. Some of them don't have expiration dates, but some of them do. Each area, you got your main quest to do, and then you also have side quests, and you have to do the main quest in the specified time, right? But also, when you travel from one location to the next, that takes a certain amount of days. So I really love that. I think that is, again, some sort of natural evolution when you have a game that's more, medieval and more, it's going to take a while to get from one place to the next, right? In a setting such as this. So you are going to take a while, to get from one place to the next. It's going to knock some days off of your calendar. So I don't know. I like it. And I guess the train-like thing that you're on, that feels like a natural, like, inclusion, right? You'd have to include it in because of the distance problem, I guess. And I think they did a really good job. So I'm just psyched because I have a lot of trust in them. And even if this is close to Persona, which I think some elements will, and some elements will be maybe a little bit more different than we think, I mean, that's fine. Because the Persona team is kind of legendary, and, it's got the classics, it's got the amazing-looking UI, it's got things that are familiar, but it's trying to do something a little bit new, right? And they really didn't even focus too much on the story. Like, a thing that, look, all of Persona, I think, is really good. And if I just think to, like, the most recent main entry, right, you think of 5, the combat's great, and I love the combat, but it's the characters and the story that really shine, and they most of the time do shine in Persona. Like, that's the main element. And to be honest with you, that was the least focused on in this live stream, which is not a problem, because that's my trust level, right? Like, I trust that the story will be good, even if they're not really focusing on it too much. I think it should still be good. The characters, like, you're going to come to like them. You know that they're going to become this, like, brotherhood, right? That you're going to really want to experience and talk to everybody and do all of their stuff, just like in Persona. You know what I mean? So those elements, I think, are, look, nothing's safe in the gaming industry. Like, just because the last game was good doesn't mean the next game will be good, but I have a lot of confidence in them, I guess I should say, on those elements. It's everything else that, they showed today, I would say, that really did impress me. So, hey, to me, honestly, this is one of the games of the fall, if not the game of the fall. There might be a handful, there might be a 3 to 6 game range, of like these really big AAA games that are coming out in the fall. I really think this is one of them that I think will sell well. I think it'll perform well. I think we could be talking about it like game of the year, when all is said and done. So I'll be covering it the best I can as we get closer and then when the game comes out. So if you guys like this, make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.